today we're going to be taking a look at Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, which is the next series within the Gundam series. And Zeta Gundam is a direct sequel to the original, taking place 8 years after the events of the first one. So without further ado, let's talk about the story. So the main character is named Camille, and he is an amateur mobile suit pilot, and both of his parents were engineers that worked for the Earth Federation and the Titans. So Camille wants to meet his parents while skipping a day of school, and one of the Titan officers named Jared ends up insulting him by calling his name a very girly name. And you know what Camille does about it? He punches him in the goddamn face. Now, one thing I really do like about Camille's character is that he's got fucking balls. So anyways, he ends up getting arrested, but while he was in the interrogation room, everything goes all fucked up and there's a bunch of mobile suits attacking. So he ends up escaping and going to the mobile suit hangar. So at the hangar, Jared is about to take off with the Mark II mobile suit, but he ends up getting hijacked by Camille. Like I said, he's got fucking balls. So eventually he ends up flying away and following Lieutenant Quattro back to the AUG, and that stands for Anti-Earth Union Group. Now, one thing I would like to say is that Lieutenant Quattro, well, that's not actually his real name, it's actually a disguise name. Now, as you know, I don't really talk about spoilers very much, but then again, I don't consider this to be a spoiler, mostly because it really does not take a genius to figure it out, but Lieutenant Quattro's actual identity is Char Aznavour from the original. So while Camille was following him back to the base, some of the Titans end up using Camille's parents as a hostage so he can return the Mark II back. So Camille ends up wanting to save his mother, who is stuck in a tube floating around in space. Jared, who was ordered by Bask Om, ends up shooting the tube, and well, she kinda dies in space because that's what happens if you're floating around in space without any equipment. So Camille just loses his shit and ends up wanting to kill everything about the Titans, which I don't blame him for, because I mean, they're just a bunch of cocknoses. So because of all this, he ends up wanting to join the AUG. So that's what you really need to know about this series, and well, I could talk a little bit more about it, but the thing is, this show is a lot more in depth than the first one. And I'll tell you that the story in this one is fucking great. So I'll talk a little bit more about the characters too. So you get Fa, who is Camille's next door neighbor, who is also a friend. And then you got Emma Sheen, who was originally a Titan member, but she defected to the AUG. Bright Noah, who is from the original series. And even Armor Ray shows up too. And then there are some bad guys that I'll talk about, like 4. Yeah, they happen to name her a number. So without going into too much detail, she is an artificial new type, and she also rides a mobile suit called the Psycho Gundam because it's psycho. Well, it's actually fucking huge, but still, it's pretty crazy. And then you also got Yazan, who is also just a huge asshole. Now, if you thought Jared was bad, oh man, this guy is even worse. And finally, I'll mention is that you got Haman from the Axis. So she is the last surviving member of the Zabi family, and she happens to ride a mobile suit called the Cubile, which I always thought looked kind of interesting. Now, I could talk about way more than this, but I'd be here all day, so I'm just gonna end it right there. But like I said, I find the story in this one is really fucking good, and same thing with all the characters too. Especially Char Aznavour, I have to say, as much as I liked him in the original, I like him here much better. So anyways, like I already said, I really enjoy the story and I really enjoy the characters in this one. Now as for the animation, I have to say, it actually is pretty damn good. But one thing that I do find to be kinda weird is that I find the animation in the opening actually looks fucking phenomenal, but then when you watch in the show, it just doesn't look as good. But of course I wouldn't say it's a big pile of crap, I still think it looks really good, it just, you know, it's not as good as it was in the intro. But it's not something I'd make a big stink about. But I figured I'd mention it, mostly because after when I've watched this one, and I haven't seen this show in a long time, so when I first fired up the intro of the first episode, I was like, wow, I don't remember the show looking this amazing looking. And then after it finally started, I was like, oh, okay, no, it doesn't look that good, but hey, it still looks pretty nice. But I really don't have any complaints about the animation themselves. I mean, the fight scenes look good, the scenery looks nice, I really don't have any complaints at all. Now as for the music, I actually find the music in the show is really damn good. So there's not a whole lot I can say about that, but as for the opening, well, there's 2 different things I can say. The Japanese opening is fucking amazing sounding. I mean, it's just really catchy, and I have to say, it's probably one of the most catchiest openings ever, and the song is called Toki wo Quote. I really don't think I said that one right, but hey, at least I gave it a try. But either way, I fucking love that opening. Now, as for the opening in English, well, I do think it is good and it is kinda cool, but it's definitely not nearly as good as the Japanese. All this is just a bunch of orchestra music, but it does suit this show, so I don't think it's bad at all. I just think it's just, compared to after listening to the Japanese one, you think, wow, why did they change it? I mean, that was just awesome sounding. But either way, I really can't go wrong with either of them. Now, as for the voice acting, it's okay. So you got Jonathan Stewart as Camille, who has not really done a lot of voice work at all, but I have to say, he actually did do a pretty good job of Camille. And then Char is being played by Tom Edwards, and his voice actually sounds okay. Definitely not nearly as good as the voice from the original, but I'd say it's alright. And everyone else's voice is, well, it's not great, but it isn't terrible either, but it's just okay. I mean, this could have been a hell of a lot worse. Although the voice for Emma is not very good at all. But other than that though, all the other voices are at least just plain okay, or like I said with Camille and Char, they're actually not that bad. So with that being said, the voice acting is pretty average, and well, it's probably the weakest point of this show. Well, at least if you're watching it in English. In Japanese, well, I don't really need to explain it. But this is another show that I do prefer watching in Japanese over the English. Now, as for the score, I'm gonna give this one a 9 out of 10. Now, if you remember from last year, I also gave the original a 9 as well. Now, you're probably thinking, well, do I think they're both equally as good as each other? Well, it's kinda hard to say. I mean, it really depends on the mood or what I had for lunch that day, because there are some days where I start thinking, like, sometimes I actually like the original one over Zeta, or sometimes I like Zeta over the original. It's just one of those weird things. Mostly because I really enjoy both of them for what they are, and yeah, there are some things I do like more in Zeta, and then there's some things I like more that are in the original. So technically I do consider it to be kinda equal, but they are both better than each other for different reasons, so therefore it's kinda hard for me to say one over the other, or at least one might have like a slight edge over the other, but not by much. Now, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to disagree with me, mostly because a lot of people that watched all the Gundam series usually like to say that Zeta is one of the best, and I can easily see why they could think this. And I agree with that because I really do think it is one of the best out there. And I also consider the original series to be a favorite of mine as well. So if you ask me, they're both awesome, and you really just can't go wrong with any of them. Now, I have to say two things before I end this video, and one of them is that I do apologize for not saying a whole lot about the story and whatnot, mostly because, like I already said, it's very in-depth, and it's really hard to explain without giving any full details. And it's also one of the reasons why I actually prefer Zeta over the originals, because I find the story to be a lot more in-depth. Now, as for the last thing I'm going to say, and while, yes, I'm going to be continuing on with the Gundam series, mainly because there's so damn many of them. But the one that comes after Zeta Gundam is actually a bunch of sequels to it, like ZZ Gundam and Stardust Memory, but they're pretty much almost like the same kind of thing as Zeta Gundam, where one of them's about all the backstory and one of them is about the continuation of it. But I really want to just move on and start talking about the other Gundam series. And I have seen them before. Well, ZZ Gundam I've seen before, I've never seen Stardust Memory. But there's not a lot to talk about that I already haven't said already in this video. And of course there's even some OVAs and some movies that came out after this one, and one of them being Char's Counterattack, which is, a fucking kick-ass movie. So if you want to know which Gundam series I'm going to be talking about next year, I'm going to be doing Victory Gundam, and besides, I haven't even seen that one before, so at least that one should be interesting. So now, time to end this one, and well, like I already said, Zeta Gundam is fucking awesome.